Okay, guys, today, Mallesh Pai, who is taking on Tempo. Let's start with a little bit of background here, because I know you from the days where we were all paying way too much attention to MEV, and you have a uniquely interesting story, even amongst the kind of MEV mechanism designer people I know, because you're a proper professor. So give us some background, and we'll talk a little bit about that before we jump in.
Okay, so hi, thanks for having me on. So background, I started out as a computer scientist. I did an undergrad in computer science. Then I was like, oh no, I really love game theory. Went on to do a PhD in economics. And then I was like, okay, time to become a professor. But I kept loving tech, so I kept like staying at the boundaries. Ad auctions, Google, Facebook, stuff like that. Worked at Google for a little bit, worked at Microsoft for a little bit in the research divisions. And then like 2021 during the pandemic, my friends kept talking about this DeFi thing and I had no idea what it was. So I started getting on Twitter and checking out what it was, and MEV nerd sniped me completely. And that's sort of long story short, that's how I got here.
So prior to 2021 or at 2021, you were like independent, like you're looking into this stuff completely independently. It's like very similar to Neslobin. His story is like, he was a professor and was like, well, what's going on over here? And I think he got sucked into it, and of course now, so it's like similar in that regard.
It's very similar. We were both faculty. I still am a professor at Rice, and then got sucked in, and just it took more and more of me, and
Okay, and you then joined or help found Special Mechanisms Group?
I did not help found Special Mechanisms Group. I was the first, with Max Resnick, I was one of the first people publicly associated with Special Mechanisms Group, so people think we founded it. We wish we did. So we sort of made a splash for a couple of papers and a little stunt that got pretty famous, and and by the way, the first
censorship gate.
the first time I think we broke into the public sphere was because of a tweet by you. So there was this right at the right at the beginning of each CC in 2023. You had this thing about comparing all the major MEV shots to political parties, and we were like the young new. I think we were AOC. I don't remember.
Okay. So then, fast forward 2023 to now. Still a professor at Rice. What have you? I mean, you've been doing some mechanism stuff, but have you been working full-time on anything in crypto specifically, or just writing papers and doing research?
So 2023 I was writing papers, doing research. 2024 I'm like, no, I can't just write, I can't just be sort of part-time. You really have to imbibe this stuff on a full-time basis, and that was also Neslobin's advice to me. So 2024 I was working part-time at Consensys, which had bought out SMG, and I asked them if I could join on full-time, and they were nice enough to say yes, and I did that for a bit, and was doing that till a few months back when the opportunity to join Tempo, this new blockchain that you probably heard about, or some people listening to the show have heard about. It's a new payments focused blockchain. The opportunity came along, and I sort of jumped at that, and so now I'm there.
Okay, right before we finally move on to Tempo, at Consensys, what were you working on? Obviously MetaMask and the OFA stuff, and I assume you were in the weeds there, but is that, to the extent that you want to talk about that at all, what was your, what was the research or product stuff you were doing at Consensys?
So I think there was the research, and there was part of it was sort of Joe's desire to have an outside voice, outside of the Ethereum Foundation, help guide some of Ethereum research, maybe from a product point of view or from an economically sound point of view. Part of it was just, sometimes being an economist just gives you a different perspective on things. So it was internal consulting teams would show up and say, hey, can you help us with think through this, think through how we should price this, how we should, what fees we should charge. And we do that sometimes, and sometimes, it was fun. It was always fun. There was different things to do on different days. Actually, the other really fun thing that happened was, which is part of my origin story and it's gotten me pilled, is so the turn of 2024 into 2025, the election happens, and suddenly like everyone realizes crypto regulation is going to change, and it's going to be so all these huge companies who would not. I mean, previously we were like Consensys was being sued, everyone in the industry was being sued.
Yeah.
Now suddenly it goes to all the biggest companies in the world are trying to figure out what on earth is this crypto thing? How do we engage with it correctly? And suddenly you're in rooms with like people you never thought you'd get to meet. And that was so 2025, the first half was just like meeting with these people, taking these things, trying to give them our view on what the right way to do crypto was. And that was just amazing and exciting. And that's sort of what we're hoping to continue at Tempo.
Talk to us about Tempo, high level. What's the pitch? This obviously got a lot of fanfare on crypto Twitter for obvious reasons we can get into. But yeah, talk to me about Tempo.
Okay, so firstly, I hate to break your bubble, but my colleague Simon Taylor, who's a fintech guru, was on Bankless talking about Tempo. So it's been done. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. We can edit that out.
We'll be more spicy.
We'll definitely be more. Oh well, I hope. My goal on this job, on this podcast, is not to get fired at the end of it.
That's fair. Brand new job, insta cooked on board show. That's fine.
So what did we do? So. What's Tempo? Tempo is, well, okay, so there's this lovely line I've heard attributed to multiple people, but to Patrick Collison in particular, founder of Stripe, which is that Stripe's job as a company is to make payments behave the way people think payments should behave, okay? And what that means is, like, if you don't think of the abstraction that customers see, actually, the underlying wires of the banking world are messy. They work very well. Don't get me wrong, but they're also like accumulations of 100 years of code and regulation and various conventions and all of that. And Stripe's job is to abstract that away so developers can build. You can have all these cool products. There's a whole bunch of other companies doing similar things. We want to kind of take that and bring it into the blockchain world. So we want to be sort of be a payments first network. So that means the network is designed first to solve all these pain points of payments using blockchains. You know, the first, like going back to the Bitcoin white paper, like it talks about electronic cash. We talk about it, but the amount of actual peer-to-peer payment on blockchains is not that much. So that's the goal. We have a few principles around that. It's not Stripe chain. It's not Corpo chain. It is a independent L1 with a roadmap to be fully neutral. We understand that you need to be fully neutral architecture if you actually want to get adopted as like core infrastructure. We are trying to both, push the frontier of what blockchains can do, and we have lots of cool people doing that. But we're also trying to listen very closely to both our existing sort of partners and both from like Stripe and Bridge and Privy, but also like all these design partners we announced, and try and get them to tell us about what is the reason they aren't using blockchains already.
Yeah. So on that note, like, in your opinion, what is the massive unlock at a high level? We'll dig into more of like the nuance, but you look at Stripe currently. Stripe is this wildly successful business, huge distribution. It is known as being sort of one of the killer fintech, startups of the past 20 years, like for sure. What do you view as like the unlock now with like when you hear we want to help our clients, we want to like help them understand, understand their problems. Like what do you, in your mind, at least, again, like you're representing, one part of Tempo and one, one role, but like in your mind, what are those big unlocks?
So there's a few I can think of, and it's not like there's just this one aha moment, but there's a couple of things building towards it. So first, there's just this regulatory clarity. We didn't have that. Right. Payments especially are highly regulated. So if you don't have regulatory clarity, it's only, there's not that many people going to be able to use it. Good. Okay. That's out of the way. The other is we've built our blockchains and we've built them in ways that are, they're open loop systems. Anyone can build on them, but we're just building like this general purpose thing and putting it out there. And we're like telling everyone it's your problem to go figure out that last mile. Again, this is not exciting or rocket science, but it's kind of true, right? Like in economics, we have this theory of micro innovations. Like, what are micro innovations? Like, Steve Jobs was not a great inventor per se, but his ability to put together things and just connect them just that final little connection that made that aha moment. Just that slide to unlock on the phone that made everyone see, this is a touch phone. So stuff like that, I think, is going to be the aha moment for Tempo. Like, not the big things. Actually, when we talk to our design partners, they're like, yeah, great, you can push lots of TPS. Yeah, you have, the best engineers in the world. But then when we tell them, our transfer function includes memos, they're like, ooh, memos. We really need that.
Yeah.
So like these little things that we, as skilled programmers think, anyone could do this, but people need this. They're not going to rewrite their entire backend system to work with your blockchain. They want someone who meets them halfway, and that's sort of our job. That's the goal we're trying to.
Yeah. And I'm hoping this question kind of lets you get into some of the specific designs of Tempo. But when I saw that you had joined Tempo, like I obviously have no prior knowledge or anything, when I saw that you had joined Tempo, it was a bit surprising to me because obviously I know you from the days of us ship posting about MEV and mechanism design and all of these like very, very, convoluted workarounds to what are, at times sort of intractable problems, right? Like for going back to just, understanding the ETH L1, which obviously you have done a tremendous amount of research on, is like the Ethereum L1 sort of operates functionally 12 seconds behind the real world. Okay, there's a lot of problems that come along with 12 seconds behind the real world, right? So all those little mechanisms that you and Max and all of us were, Flashbots are all, going around on Twitter about, they are in kind of, this brings in like the whole your fascination with game theory and whatnot. But when I saw that you had joined Tempo, I was like, okay, wait, what mechanisms need to be designed on a payment first, I won't call you corporate chain, but like the understanding is that the goal is to work with real world businesses, and real world businesses aren't going to want to be sandwiched in front run. And so like, I'm curious, you didn't seem to be the immediate fit. I knew you were smart, but I didn't, it wasn't like, I would have much, I would have thought you would be working on some, convoluted trading thing and elsewhere. So like, in your opinion, what is the mechanism that need to be designed? And like, maybe, elucidate us on the kind of design of Tempo.
Sure. I mean, I definitely thought I would be MEV forever too. Yeah. But I think part of it is, so there are some MEV problems. So let's go down them, and some of them are interesting. So one of the things we want to do, which is maybe different from some of the other payment first chains, is we do believe in stables, but we're not going to have a designated single enshrined stable.
Okay.
So that means that we want lots of stables, and potentially, so now you have this question of, okay, there's all these stables. Mallesh has, I don't know, Mallesh USD, and he wants to pay GWAT, but GWAT wants GWAT USD. So how should that work? So yes, you want some kind of AMM in there to be able to swap between these things, so that seamlessly everyone can abstract away from their USD preference and just pay USD. We want people to be able to pay for gas and stablecoins, because another big unlock, by the way, going back to those unlock questions, is a lot of banks and financial institutions tell us they don't want to, even if it's just small amounts, they don't want to hold
any
ETH
type
and
of
so
work. Yeah, it's
exactly.
like not worth it to hold some like exotic token as working capital for them, when if the optionality is there to use a stable. But anyways,
exactly.
I've had similar thoughts for a while.
Yeah,
so
they want to pay in stables, and we need and now, potentially a lot of banks or large FIs are going to come on and say, hey, we want to use our stable. We don't want to hold, this other bank's stable to pay for stuff. And at that point, we need a way to, again, sort of abstract that away from the user.
Yeah. So like, just kind of digging into that for a second, on a high level, there's not going to be an enshrined stable on Tempo. There's going to be, a plethora of these, but you want them to act functionally like as a fungible like version of, like gas being 1 cent is 1 cent is 1 cent is $1. How does that actually work in practice, right? Like the protocol understands is like hard coded to have some. Okay.
No. I mean, it's that there is going to be a market at the core, highly optimized AMM at the core of the market. Each person's coin is worth what the market says it's worth, but it will be used. It'll be optimized enough that it can be used to pay for fees.
Interesting. What do you, just like somewhat of an adjacent question, you were talking about everyone's going to want their kind of own stable. And I think that there's two beliefs about this going forward, and both could probably be true. One is that something like Tether or USDT has just massive kind of economies of scale, and liquidity begets liquidity, and there's massive, incentives to aggregate around a single sort of unified stable coin. Us Bitcoin maxis have said this. I say Bitcoin maxis, us Bitcoin mostimists, right, have said this for quite some time, at least with regards to the store of value use case, which is that like this is much more sort of real kind of aggregation around a single asset, similar with stablecoins. So that's one side of it, right? It's like quite likely that there's kind of a winner take all. With that said, real world assets like stablecoins and dealing with real world finance, which a lot of us crypto people don't actually know very much about, is that there are a lot of reasons that one jurisdiction or one country or one business wants to operate under their own standards. And we think about this like open permissionless system whereby the market will always determine the winner. But the reality is that if some municipality in Malaysia says that you can only pay taxes with this stable coin, then people will be forced to hold that stable coin. And so there will be this, emerging market of tons of different stable coins. How do you view Tempo? So is this sort of like one of the kind of ideas you guys have, is that like we want to be able to facilitate everybody, if they so choose, being able to launch their own coin? And then how do you view this kind of going forward, maybe on like working with partners and stuff? Like, do you expect some of these new financial institutions and so on, do you expect all of them to have their own stables functionally?
I mean, I expect them to be, at least to the extent they're working with Tempo, I expect them to be free to make their choices. So we're taking a very neutral stance. Tempo is not going to issue a stable coin. Tempo is not going to compete in this, not going to try and force people towards a particular stable coin. But there are a lot of stablecoin providers out there. A lot of them, by the time the show airs, it will be public that they have they will be integrating with Tempo. There are more we're talking to, and I think that's sort of our goal is like you said, some town somewhere might say you have to use this. We as Tempo, as a neutral infrastructure layer, should not come in and impose our design decisions on these, on what is effectively a political economy question or a business question. So our job is to just make sure that it works well, right? And how does, think back to why is there not just one big bank? There are like 4,000 big banks, right? Like basically, in that case, it was government. Government stepped in and said, there is this thing, there's the Fed, you all have to have some amount of liquidity at the Fed, and then you can move money back and forth. And this enables singleness of the dollar. So a dollar in JP Morgan is the same as a dollar in Citi. It doesn't get repriced at all. We're not going to have the power of regulation, but we're going to try and use markets and so on to try and achieve something that's functionally close to a similar singleness. And yeah.
Okay, tell me a little bit about just like the high-level design from validators and actors within the system, and it's like EVM. Give me just like the broad strokes of that.
So broad strokes, it's EVM. It's a Reth-based implementation. Based on the team, we know Reth. We've worked with Reth. We're funded by the people who built Reth, so we kind of know what's going on. The validator set is going to be permission to begin with, and then move to a permissionless system. Details roadmap to be announced.
Yeah, no. You said kind of roadmap details to be announced, and I also assume that you are genuinely still working on it. So I'm not going to I'm not going to ask you to divulge some stuff. So I assume it's still a work in progress. So how does a validator work? Proof of stake, and you are staking what asset? Well, okay, I can make an assumption there. So it is permissioned at first, and then what? Who do you envision being the stakers, right? Because for example, one of the claims, maybe I don't want to say this is a cynical take, but let's say we're talking about Solana, for example. If you look at maybe the long-term equilibrium of who are validators on Solana, and you look at what activity occurs on Solana, you can sort of do a little bit of deduction and look like, okay, hang on, these, like the way you would make money validating on Solana is probably through HFT like behavior. So like maybe in the long run, the validators on Solana are, people who make money by originating or owning sources of order flow. Seems Tempo being a payment blockchain, one thing that sometimes seems a little bit lost on people is that like when you're doing peer-to-peer stablecoins. Now I know that there's going to be a bunch of stablecoins and there's going to be an AMM, so that this adds a little bit of the MEV, and that would be why you were brought in. But like one thing is, if I send you 100 USDC on Phantom Wallet on Solana, there's not really MEV there, right? Like not in the way that there is MEV when you're making a swap on an AMM, right? Because it's a peer-to-peer transaction. There's really no way to reorder it such that it ends up a different value on the other side for some reason, right? Who do you expect to be the validators in this system? Is it big banks, is it big institutions, or is it a random mom and pop shop that for some reason wants to run a Tempo validator? Do you have like anything? Again, I know you don't actually know yet, but to the extent that you can kind of foresee the future here.
I think initially it'll be permissioned. Like I said, I really don't know like what the long term looks like. It could be, of course, that just running a validator is profitable in and of itself, in which case, and there's not a lot of MEV games, which actually, or if we do our job correctly, there won't be that many MEV games. So you could totally imagine there is, it's just a profitable thing to run, and that would be without needing to be like a high-skilled HFT operator. So that would result in a certain kind of person wanting to be a validator. Our hope is that I think that, of course, all large payments networks and so on will want to be validators. But again, these are all TBD at this point.
When you say there won't be, if you do your job correctly, there won't be a lot of MEV, is this a function of how the system is designed at a code level, insofar as you literally cannot launch some type of like really cumbersome AMM? That's not right.
I should actually take that back. So
Okay.
let's be careful. On the payment side, if we do our job right, there won't be that much MEV. Like there won't be any, there shouldn't be much gaming around a stable. It will be a permissionless chain. So even from day one, like it won't be a permissionless to validate, but at least our plan for now is that it will be a permissionless chain. So you could have other activity, and we're just not going to take a stance on it. Just with people want to do stuff, people might do stuff, and there might be MEV as a result of that. How much will there be? I don't know.
There's like, we were talking a little bit about this last night. We were talking about kind of like how, there are ways within what is global state to kind of constrain certain portions of blocks. Maybe that's not exactly the way to say it, but to, not prioritize, well, maybe it's a form of prioritization, but, create a system whereby the activity of, for example, on Solana, you have all this degeneracy AMM, and then maybe that's not exactly the same contentious state you want with peer-to-peer payment system. In the future of Tempo and then blockchains in general, like what are the ways to kind of make sure that certain use cases are not, subordinate to behavior that would just be annoying for OpenAI sending a payment to Oracle or whatever, right? And it's like, why are we dealing with having like some bot paying?
What coin just launched, and yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think so the thing that we are doing to start with this is just payments are like a first class. One of the things we realized is payments are both like, people rely on payments being predictable.
Right.
But they're also very price sensitive. So if you're sending a $1 payment and the gas fee has gone up to 50 cents, that's sort of just a disaster. It's just not going to work. So you need reliable and cheap. And what we're doing for that is, for now, we're starting with payments transactions that look like payments live in their own lane. So they just have their own separate gas limit.
And what is, just clarify for me and the audience, what does their own lane mean?
It just means that there is a reserved quantity of the block that can only be spent on payment transactions. And suppose we're in some world where there's Coin has just launched and everyone on Tempo and everyone wants to get it. That's going to be in the other lane. not going to, the noisy neighbor problem is just, they're just two different towns. Your noisy neighbors live in the other town. So that's sort of the starting thing. And then we have further optimizations down the road as this thing hits scale, to roll out.
Let me take a moment to talk to you about Ellipsis Labs, a team I've known for a while building some of the most interesting products in the space. The Ellipsis team is one of the few that I can consistently point to and say, these guys really know what they're doing. They're backed by Paradigm, Electric Capital, and Hahn Ventures. The founders, Eugene and Jerry, have experience at Citadel, Jane Street, and the Solana Core team. Since launching their order book DEX, Phoenix, they've done over $80 billion in trading volume by making on-chain order books competitive with centralized exchanges. They are also the team behind Gavel and SolFi. I would consider them the foremost experts in crypto market microstructure. The best part is Ellipsis is hiring for New York-based engineers. Work with a small, focused team who are results-driven, collaborative, and use a modern stack. If you're an engineer who wants to work on infrastructure that's already proving itself in the market, go to ellipsislabs.xyz. Okay, now back to the show.
Your role is, so wait, tell me your exact title.
So I had a title, which I'm not allowed to announce anymore. I got there and then, to the credit of this team, right? I tweeted the list of people, and there's more in there, and they're all superstars. And one of the things we didn't want is like, it's a small team, it's all superstars, and everyone's going to be like, hey, this is below my pay grade. So we just said, and nobody, to everyone's credit, nobody does that. Like everyone's just, okay, today we just have to mop the floors to, or just do something menial. Well, we'll get it done. So. But one way to enforce that was we got rid of titles. So everyone just goes with, okay, I am Mallesh. I am in. So I showed up. I had title. Within a day, it was like, no, wait, let's just do department. So then I was Mallesh Research. But then Elon tweeted saying there should be no research. There's only product. So now I'm Mallesh and product. And then we had, based on what I've been doing for the last few months, Palantir has this forward deployed engineer role that is they're famous for that. And I've been spending a lot of time hanging out with design partners. So we joked that I was a forward deployed researcher, and that's what I call myself now.
Okay, so, all right, but there was at least the announcement when I saw it was something with regards to product. And which is also goes back to me kind of being like, not only is Mallesh joining Tempo, which I thought he would be doing some order flow auction stuff. Not only is he joining Tempo, but he is doing product. This is very, very vague, but what does product mean in your mind? And maybe a better question is what are you excited about first and foremost, first 6 months, first a year? What are the products you're excited to see?
There is only one product really, there's the blockchain, right? But there's a collection of features that we want in there. Some of them are more on the researchy side, like this AMM thing that we have to work on. Some of them are maybe a little less technical, like the memos thing, but it's actually kind of important, right? I've sort of taken this, I've started almost bargaining against myself, but one of the things we keep, everyone is just telling everyone else, let's not galaxy brain this. Sometimes it's not like you want to do, you don't want to be 8 steps ahead of what people need. You just need to figure out what they need and actually give them that. So just making sure that, so our job, there's our head of product, I think, I don't know what, well, there's no heads, so I don't want. But we have someone who actually knows how to run product. Liam Horn joined, and so that's amazing. But I help out, and that's sort of our job is to try to listen to these design partners, distill that into what does that mean for the actual roadmap, and then make sure it's on the roadmap and shipped appropriately.
Okay, I want to ask a little bit. I know, again, still work in progress. Is there anything unique about this AMM right now, or how are you thinking about this? Uni v3 fork? Are we talking is there anything sort of in your mind as to how to design an AMM that is, at least sounds like at the beginning, is going to be kind of stablecoin specific, and so curve-esque, although maybe that was from 2020, but that's how I think about it, obviously.
Yeah, so there's actually two AMMs. One is for paying fees in any stablecoin.
Okay.
There's another AMM, so that has that's just meant to be super fast because it's just every transaction, potentially many transactions will use it. A validator can state, this is what I want to get paid in. Users can just say, this is the stable coin I want to use to pay transactions, and the AMM has to be able to track through that. So this one's fast and not meant for price discovery. It's just meant to pay small amounts for gas payments.
Got it.
There is a enshrined cross stablecoin AMM, where the main job is to we want the liquidity to be on chain, and we want to make sure that the routing problem is easy. So how do you concentrate liquidity when there are, if there are n blockchains, n stablecoins? Do we have n square pairs? So we have a sort of design that trims that down. We're hoping to put it out soon. I won't try to explain it without a whiteboard, at least. Give me my professorial.
Were you working on this? Was this like
I was helping with this?
Okay.
So that was one of the things, and then further down the stream, that we're working on thinking about how to do FX, where there is going to be much more real MEV, but that's sort of further down, and there's no design decisions I think yet.
FX is like sort of a FX with real world pairs is kind of like one obvious, like has long been one obvious kind of use case, which has not really come into full fruition, mainly because most people have desired USDC, or you have desired some dollarized stablecoin, right?
Right. But I mean, there's reasons. So I think the current use case of why do people use most of the blockchains that exist, there's a reason that USD dollars, either C or T or any of the others. There's a reason that's preeminent, right? So one is all, like if you're using it to trade, all the pairs, depending on where you are, is quoted in one of these, so it's useful to own it. And the other is, like, for a lot of people in the global south, this is access to hard currency that they didn't have access to, so that's great. As we get, like, for us, we're starting to talk to our partners and so on, like they want to do remittance flows. And now the question is, do you just send the USD and then off-ramp it into the sort of currency? Does the recipient off-ramp it into the currency they want to hold, or at a bank, or is it that we transfer it and they can on-chain move it into the currency they want to spend? That's, either future is possible, but at least now there's like more of a reason for, like, unlike people trying to hedge currency and hold on to USD, you could totally imagine like a business just in Turkey or something that's getting paid for selling stuff on Amazon or something would want to get paid in their local currency, because that's what they need to pay taxes in. That's what they need to do stuff in.
Yeah. One thing that is kind of interesting about remittances is, like, it seems, I say remittances, let's just say like cross-border, not even just cross-border payment, just like any type of sending money. Let's just say any type of cross-border payments, I guess. To me, what's always been interesting is that it seems like it is the easiest use case for blockchains. Like, it is so obvious that sending somebody, I think about, just, we'll use Solana as an example, but like sending somebody USDC on Solana is really a pretty good experience, and it is orders of magnitude better than Western Union or any of the other ways. I mean, even wire transfers, maybe that's a little bit of a different domain, but it is so very clearly different. One of the, and this is the question I'm kind of curious about your thoughts. Like, one of the, problems is that exactly what you just said, which is that, okay, you send somebody, like you live in the United States and you want to send money to your relative in Guatemala. Well, once they get it there, unless that is fungible currency in that country where they can live their entire lives on that, a lot of times the costs that they bear to move stables into a currency, that just could even add more costs than what we have currently. So that is like one thing. Like, remittances or whatever, cross-border payments seem like such an easy unlock, but it's somewhat predicated on the world coming on chain, ironically, So I don't know. Is that, like, do you generally agree with that? Like,
I do. Like, I mean, look, either the world has to come on chain, or we have to improve. Like, we have to move closer to the world. So,
and this is something that Bridge has been doing, attempting, right? Like,
yeah. So this is something that Bridge is doing. Like, it's literally meant to be a bridge. That's I guess where the name comes from. There's a bunch. So that's some of the last mile stuff that we need to solve, right? Like, people. The rest of my family is like, I show them, I have 5,000 USDC in this wallet, and they're like, what does that mean? Like, what can I do with it? Can I spend it? Can I?
Right,
and I'm
right.
like, but I can go put it in this yield account, and they're like, yeah, that makes no sense to me. Like, tell me when I can spend it. So that's, I think that part of the design, or some of the questions about what are we designing in Tempo is like, can we design ways at a technical level, we know how to solve this, but we also need to solve it at like making it easier to off ramp. And some of that is
Right.
like when it's time to off ramp, the off ramp party wants to know where did this money come from. They don't want to be involved in like some kind of money laundering.
Right.
So now again, memos suddenly become super useful because you can say, hey, here's the invoice that I'm getting paid out from. Look, it's in the memo of the associated transaction. Now, will you please let me cash this out? So all of that stuff makes a difference. And yeah.
Do you think like
Actually, could I tell you one side story?
yeah, let's hear it.
So international transfers are actually like the weirdest thing. Like that's the part that behaves very differently from the way you think they behave. That's where like that Stripe question like becomes the most interesting. So correspondent banking is really weird.
It's incredibly weird.
It's
Go on.
incredibly
I've
weird.
experienced it, so go on.
So when I want, I'm sitting here, I want to send money to somebody in India. What do I have? Like the bank just says, okay, give me their address and so on. But the bank might not have a so the way it works is banks have like chains of Vostro and Nostro accounts. Like they have pre-funded accounts with correspondent banks, and maybe my bank doesn't even have any international relation. I bank with some small community bank. And then that bank goes to Chase and says, hey, here's some money. Now, can you send it to this person? And Chase goes to maybe Santander. Chase says, I don't know anyone in India. Chase says, I'll go to Santander and says, hey, do this. And the wire has to be specified. The entire route has to be specified in advance. It's not dynamic routing. So when it gets to Santander, if Santander's like, I don't have the right, Vostro account, then it just comes back.
I've dealt with it. My mom was renting an apartment in France 2 summers ago, and she got the information from the, real estate agency there, how to make a payment. And it was one of the first times where like, this is actually insane. I send money from my Wells Fargo account to BNY Mellon maybe, or a big New York bank. They send it to London, who then sends it to a bank in Monaco or something like that. That wasn't even that was the bigger community bank of a smaller community bank. And I saw this process and all of the numbers that you have to follow along the way. I'm like, this is actually insane. Like, I cannot believe we still do this. So it's so clear there, but then it's like, why does that even still exist? Because in many, we're sitting here, it's like, okay, the market's going to determine winners like over the long run, but like, this is something that this should be out of the window in 2017. So like, it still exists to this day, right?
It still exists to this day. And just to be clear, the origins of this, if you trace it back, the Medici family invented correspondent banking, right? So we are still moving on with a system that started back then. And every bank is not going to rely on the previous bank to say this met my compliance. Everyone's going to redo compliance. Everyone's going to redo this. There's like it's just a fascinating system. And then once you're inside the system, you optimize the system. You don't step outside and think, could this be done differently? And a lot of what exists right now, the entire sort of modern fintech industry and banking is about like abstracting this so that it looks normal to you. Like, I'm surprised you even saw that path. Most people's wires don't see that. They don't see that path. They just say, my money's been missing for a week. Where is it? And then a search team goes to look for it.
It is really incomprehensible because I don't know. I feel like we expect tech to move fast enough that something like that does not exist. Like, I'm not saying that, we see immediate adoption of every new technology for obvious reasons, but like, that's one where it is just so readily apparent. But that also makes me like, because that does still exist, because when you're trying to wire even like domestic wire, because when you see how cumbersome these processes still are, it does make me think that there's a lot of stuff that crypto people don't know, right? Like, there's things we don't understand, compliance being a primary example. Like, to me, I send money, like, why can't I just wire money to the owner of this apartment for my mom in France, right? And no, it's like, we need to make sure that that's not some, drug money or whatever. And it's like that, but it does seem like, what do you think are the big like roadblocks still? I mean, compliance probably one of the big ones. Like, what do you view in current fintech as like, this is what's holding us back?
I mean, compliance is a big one. The other one is just, it's like we're trying to recreate a network, right? So recreating a network, moving a network is always hard. It's always like the meme, but it's suddenly and then all at once. So no one's going to move unless other people move. And we need to try and pull that off.
The thing is, like, the switching costs are, they don't seem like they should be very high insofar as, like, why doesn't that person, again, that I'm wiring money to in France, why don't they just download Phantom? We can take out all of these idiots. You know what I mean? I mean, seriously, it should be. But then, like, again, it goes to, I think a lot of this, like, when a process is still, like, very cumbersome and seems like it's intermediated in all these bizarre ways, I try to kind of, I try to have a little bit of humility in assuming that, like, okay, there's things that I must not understand, right? Like, for this to still be around in this capacity.
But so some of it is just, why don't they download Phantom? Well, they're worried, even if, so some people are not, like, one of the things we have to understand as a like, our sort of, crypto rallying cry or whatever is, not your keys, not your coins. Most people, including basically all of my family, are not ready for, like, being on a recent show, my colleague Simon Taylor, being your own bank means also dealing with your own bank robbers.
Right, exactly.
That's not something most people want to do. So we also have to be ready to provide, like, more curated experiences,
right,
instead of being just purely maxis. Everyone needs to meet us where we are. So of course, there's that. Maybe your landlord was not technically, like, ready for this, but also even if they were, they might be thinking, okay, I have USDC now, what am I going to do with it? Like, unless I plan to rent an apartment for my mom in the US, right?
That person also accepts, that can use it again, right?
Exactly.
Send it right back. Yeah.
Otherwise, I have to go to a bank in France and try and explain, hey, I have this USDC that got sent to me on Phantom, and they'll be like, "Quoi?" So that's yeah.
What do you think in, like, 10, 20 years, we're at some, like, long-term sort of equilibrium? What do you think our relationship, like, the individual, you could say business as well, but let's maybe from an individual level right now, like, what do you think our relationships with banks look like? Do we still have bank accounts? Like, I'm ready to, stop using wires. I can tell you that. You know what I mean? So, like, what do you kind of predict?
I could say, like, again, banks, bundle together a whole bunch of things, right?
Right. That's the other thing. Sorry to interrupt, but that's the other thing that I think I am much more sympathetic to is, like, a lot of crypto people think that banks have this, like, single purpose. They take money from somebody and then they send it elsewhere. Banks do a ton of stuff, right? And financial institutions do a ton of stuff. And we don't need to disintermediate the whole thing, right?
Right. So they currently, because of regulation, because of history, path dependence, whatever, they do a whole collection of things. It could be that they're still doing a lot of these things, just for some people way more efficiently with the blockchain backend. It could be that parts of the business get disintermediated and go out. It could be that we move to a different equilibrium where there's everyone's self-custodying and, or a lot of people are self-custodying, and then there's banks are, like, getting that money and then using it as originators, almost behaving like private credit. You could imagine any of these things being possible in, like, maybe 20 is too soon, but like 40, 50 years, who knows? Like, what a bank is super different from what a bank used to be, right? Like, banks did not, like, now I can go on my Chase app and I have my brokerage right there. I mean, I have an app and it's really good, right? Which wasn't the case for banks 20 years ago. And now I can go on that app and I have my credit card, my savings account, my checking account, my investment bank, my mortgage, all of it in one place. I can do, like, full management. So it's changed. It'll keep changing. That's sort of yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we want to come back to Tempo now. We just, like, got but it's like all relevant.
Fun talking about
it's relevant stuff though. Obviously. Well, it's like the question you guys immediately got castigated by crypto Twitter for, which is, why another L1, right? And you hear all these pitches, one from this should be an L2, and then the explanation for why it should be an L2 is, maybe has some logic, maybe not. And then you also hear, well, why isn't Stripe just building atop Solana? Give me your pitch, or you don't have to pitch it yourself, but give me the rationale behind why does Tempo need to be its own L1?
I think part of it was we just wanted freedom to chart our own path, right? So we love and we're close to, and we still talk to everyone in both the Solana and the Ethereum ecosystems. But for instance, one of the things that you really need for payments is fast finality.
Right.
And Ethereum, like if we were going to be an L2, we would have at the present moment 12 minute
yeah.
12 minute finality with a potential like with like and they're thinking about fast finality, but I don't know when it'll be ready.
And that'll still be 12 seconds.
I mean, you can start having like at that point it starts becoming negotiation. But yes, I don't know what they're going to end up at, but I don't like part of it is like we just didn't want to be, I think, reliant on. We wanted to see what we could achieve when we had freedom to build our own stack in our own opinionated way, and part of that was there's obviously the fast finality thing. There's a bunch of things we want to do at the execution layer that we wouldn't, for instance, be able to do in Solana. We wanted to bake various things into the execution. These debates, some people are very reasonable about the technical merits or lack thereof. It also becomes a bit religious, which is both what makes crypto fun and whatever. I'm trying to not piss off the religious maxis. No. But I think it's just there's like there are going to be a lot of L1s. There some of them will survive in the long run, some of them won't. But even like you look at payments right now, right? Nobody goes to Amex and says, why do you need to be Amex? Why can't you just be Visa?
Yeah.
Like payments can support like 18 L1s, as it were.
Right.
We just, if this project is successful, it's just going to bring net new money into crypto. When it brings net new money into crypto, those people, some of them are going to play in the Tempo world, and some of them are going to bridge out and do other fun stuff into Solana, into Ethereum. It will hopefully just be fun for everyone. So that's sort of my olive branch, which is just let us play. You obviously want to judge us by our actions, not our words, but it will be a permissionless chain. We are trying to keep a lot of the crypto ethos. So it's not just like we're going to take all the money and put it inside our little corpo chain walled garden. That is not what's happening here. It's just, it is a chain. And we have, as you will see, a whole bunch of technical reasons that some of them you could say, oh yeah, if you could do A, B, and C, you could have done it using, there were a bunch of long threads that were like, I could do all of these things in an L2 or on Solana if you just use this collection of technologies. But you'd be like, you'd be putting the cart before the horse. You never want to start from, this is the tech I want to use, and then work backwards to, this is the product I want to build. You want to start from the product and just say, what's the best way to do that? And that's what we just did it from first principles. And that's the reason.
Hey, Will here with Blockspace Media. Did you know that we have individual feeds for all our shows? If you're watching the Mining Pod, Bitcoin Season 2, or the Court Show, be sure to check out the individual feeds. You can find them on your podcast player of choice, whether that be Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. Just type in Blockspace Media and you'll find all our shows pop up, or just type in the individual show name like the Mining Pod or Bitcoin Season 2. Be sure to hit that subscribe and give us a 5-star rating so we can continue to bring you the best content in Bitcoin.
We've seen a number of, okay, so like, for example, a lot of us completely missed this, but Google is apparently launching some infrastructure layer. I don't even know if they're calling it L1 or what, but one of their selling points, which has been now the selling point of many of these new L1s, Tempo included, is this idea of, credible neutrality. What does that mean to you, at least with regards to Tempo? Like, what are the attributes of credible neutrality where we can say, okay, like this is a system being built such that, there are no outsized actors that can, influence the system in a certain way? Like, what does credible neutrality mean in this context?
I think credible neutrality means basically, for me, it's that the chain and design decisions in the chain will not be built in ways to favor some, unduly favor some parties over others. So it's not like we will build in like, hey, this is the special Stripe lane for people to do that. That's just not what's going to happen. It's going to be designed in a way that just makes, hopefully, payments and then things around payments good and work well for users. In ways like the APIs will be public. I believe a lot of this will be open sourced. validation will be permissionless. There will be there will be all your favorite third-party infrastructure providers that you currently use today. Many of them are in talks or have agreed to integrate with Tempo. By the time the show airs, I think the list will be a first list will be public, and you'll see like let's be clear, like a lot of our design partners are independent companies, and if you told them, hey, you are going to do like partly what does credible neutrality mean? Like it's saying you're not going to be like vendor locked in, platform locked in, none of that. So we're just not doing that, and that, to me, that's the beginnings of credible neutrality. There's a bunch more. We are not presumably like, unless laptops and like we might not ever reach maybe the complete, you can validate this from, a Raspberry Pi. It's the meme. Don't hate me, crypto Twitter, but it's that is not our end goal. But from reasonable consumer grade hardware, I believe you should be able to.
The other thing too is like, this is just one of those things that we've now witnessed for the past 5 years of, crypto growing up in general. Like when Tempo launches, right? When Tempo was announced, we get everybody on crypto Twitter screeching about this should be an L1, or this should be on, or this should be an L2, or this should be on Solana, or this should be on an AVAX subnet, or whatever their bags are. Do you start thinking, because I certainly do, like, do you start thinking like, man, it does not matter what crypto Twitter says anymore. Like we are going to be targeting Stripe's customers. Who cares what some degenerate with NFT PFP over here has thoughts on what Stripe should do, right? I'm like, yo, whether or not it works is one story, and whether or not your claims for why it should work may be valid. Like if you truly believe that you need this, maximally, bunker coin, whatever, then it's a valid that you could think it may not work. But here's the thing, Stripe has thought this stuff through. Stripe is a real business that, unlike 99.9% of crypto companies, makes money, has viable, like they know payments, or at least payments, right? Stripe at least knows payments. It doesn't matter what crypto Twitter thinks anymore. Like, do you see us? Does this kind of resonate with you at all in terms of us growing up? Like, I'm looking at this and I have, sort of mixed feelings. In one sense, I'm like, yeah, like most chains, they end up failing. So, probabilistically, most startups fail, but like you're asking, Stripe why they need to do payments the way they want to do payments. It's like, my guy, Stripe of all people, the audacity, right?
Yeah, I think it's, it's part of it is like the crypto religious sort of thing.
For sure. No, most of it is.
Yeah, most of it is. So I think people like, Hasib had this wonderful, and I know I look like a budget Hasib right now, but
yeah, I didn't know you didn't have hair.
And now my CEO says I need to be the new, I need to be Tempo's Mert, so that's the goal. No, I think some of the criticism is coming from a right place, which is that crypto has existed for so long and survived through a lot of stuff because it built a certain ethos. And if we just throw out that ethos right now in search of money, that's just, or in search of like PMF, we've just replaced the thing with the thing, with a maybe slightly different version of the old thing. So we want to keep the ethos. I think there is the part we don't want to be is back biased. It's just not like,
but also, essentially the partners you're working with are not ideologically driven.
I think there's the partners we're working with, some of them are, there's like shades of how crypto knowledgeable they are. Some of them are crypto curious. Some of them have are literally asking us, okay, please give us your validator code so we can start like putting some of our special stuff in for the node.
Yeah.
So there's an entire spectrum there. And one of the things, like our job is to try and, just be good ambassadors of crypto overall.
I want to ask you just like about kind of a design question, and I've long been a little bit curious about this and thinking through like maybe the end state of proof of stake chains, but maybe specifically with regards to stablecoin as gas token L1s. Is there a future where validators on chains, you don't really need something at stake on the grounds that, you have all these sort of different entities, and they've all opted in, and they've all realized that the kind of, game theoretically, the incentive to defect is low on the grounds that like it's a shared system and everyone benefits. I don't know. Maybe there's some allegory with something like Linux, right? Where, I mean, not perfectly, because the financial interests aren't exactly the same, but there's been open source sort of contribution from private companies for a long time. And, I think this is somewhat lost upon crypto, that like all of the large tech companies have people dedicated to working on the kernel and working on, helping internet protocols stay functional, because they all benefit from it. I'm curious with regards to specifically proof of stake chains, if you see a future where you don't actually really need to have something like monetary at stake, because everyone is sort of opted into a system, and no one is really going to defect, because the kind of network effect benefits are greater than screwing over somebody to front run them or something, or, double spend. What do you see as kind of like the future of proof of stake? Because and I'll just add one last thing, like the Bitcoin maxis have long pushed this as sort of a criticism, which is like you get to a point where you have all these large entities, and they like they're all validators in their own sort of way, and they all see the benefits of opting into open source protocol. And like this whole stake idea, it's like no one's necessarily needing to slash anybody, because everybody knows that like they all benefit, right?
Yeah. So there's two parts to this. One, yes, I think people, especially some of the vibe in crypto Twitter, which maybe I'm over-indexing on, was always about, big bad tech and big bad, and yes, they're and big bad corp. But we got to understand that a lot of the things that work are essentially, like someone once told me and meant as a compliment, that Swift is like the world's most successful DAO, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like that's sort of and that's like.
Well, also sorry, but like this is a great point. Like Swift is ironically pretty decentralized. It's just not very good tech. That's the difference that I think people have, at least from my perspective.
It's very good tech. It's just constrained by 190 different regulation sets. Like I think it's very good tech. Like imagine you are yes, sometimes money, because Swift is not a settlement network. Swift is a messaging network.
Right.
So money sometimes goes to, but the messaging network is dealing with like billions of messages, peak throughput of messages. And like, I believe 80% of these messages are like WTF messages, which is basically like my message goes to you saying wire money for this person. And then you send back a message saying, dude, that message was not properly formatted. What the?
That's funny.
But and there's by the way, Swift aficionados are called Swifties, and they have a big conference, and that's a whole separate thing. But like so big tech has a history of working together in the right ways. Visa and MasterCard are, they started out as single bank things, and then they became these larger sort of effectively not conglomerate, like DAOs, that then became private companies. More recently, there's some lovely podcasts and histories to read about that. So that's part one. Part two is, I should say, the part that proof of stake solves is, there's two separate questions here. One is whether slashing or something like that is useful. Proof of stake solves Sybil resistance, right?
Yes.
So that's in a permissionless network. If I'm not going to permission you, then I need something valuable that says you, not like, GWT 1, GWT 2, GWT 3, all claiming to be different people. So that's what I'm trying, like, that is one part you need to solve. I think there's a paper that I have to get out on the game theory of slashing, because I have my, like, I think people who have not thought through the entire game just thought about like, if you do something wrong, you get punished, and therefore you need slashing, and not thought through that entire game and the entire equilibrium, like you said. And it's something that we need to think more carefully about, because as we're seeing with some of the recent like this Kiln unstaking drama, like there are other attacks that we did not, we designed a system around a bunch of attacks that we thought existed. But then, I mean, Kiln is not an attack, but it's a problem that we didn't design around. And maybe, in any system, you're trading off between like throughput or performance and like some kind of worst case problem. If you get the definition of what are your worst case problems wrong, you're just going to get the wrong solution.
I'm a little bit, this is a little bit tangential, but I kind of wanted to ask you about the slashing thing, because I've kind of viewed slashing, right? So like Solana doesn't have slashing right now, but totally says they eventually want to implement it. But the thing about slashing, and I come obviously at this more from looking at Bitcoin and understanding like, okay, if you expend, let's call it, I don't know right now. I was talking to a guy last week who was works at CleanSpark, and he was telling me like their average cost to mine a Bitcoin. I don't really know what goes into this number, but he was saying it's probably like $40,000 or $50,000, or maybe like between $30,000 and $40,000 to mine a Bitcoin, right? Well, which seems to me like pretty. I agree, and it's that's a side note, but it does seem like I know it's like, oh wow, like this is not like we are nowhere near like gold, for example, in terms of the margins. Like we still have a long way to go, but so this is a bit tangential, but like with Bitcoin, right, like it's quite easy to understand that, like, you put all these resources, you allocate a bunch of computers and energy toward finding a block, and then if you try to do something nefarious and the network rejects it, well, your opportunity cost there was you just spent all this money and resources and you don't get the reward, right? So, but ironically with MEV, it's quite similar. Like there's no incentive to do something nefarious because you're not going to receive the rewards, and so it should be somewhat of a corollary. But obviously Ethereum had, I think, the Ethereum slashing was. You look at Ethereum, and especially like when I started to look at around the merge, right, and like really look at how the system works, you can see that a lot of these things are kind of what I would call vestiges of proof of work, which like slashing was a prime example of that. Like, oh well, now that it's all stake, right, and no one's expending massive amounts of resources to mine these things, we need some way to penalize someone. But in reality, it's like, no, you don't get all of those rewards that you would get. So that enough should be incentive not to defect effectively, right? So I'm curious, like, how you view slashing.
And on top of that, like, let's think, because again, slashing has both type 1 and type 2 errors, or false positives and false negatives. Like, think back to what happened during the Holesky sort of debacle during Fusaka. So basically, there was an error in the spec, and when that when there was the error in the spec, now, of course, it was happening on a test net, so nobody gave it, and nobody noticed. But like, imagine now, we have ETFs, since they're going to stake, and we have like all these large institutional clients, and they're going to stake. And I understand that it's all very well and good for core devs to say, well, we're not here to optimize for ETFs, right, or
BlackRock.
BlackRock. But on the flip side, like someone's going to sit down and say, hey, we followed the spec you guys gave us to the wire.
Yeah.
You forgot to change the staking address or whatever. And now there's a bunch, and now our money is being slashed.
Right.
Like that, how is, and then who is at fault? Like, so I can, so I see parts of why Solana says, hey, if there's a problem, it might be easier to actually figure out in ex post, because we can't ex ante write rules on what is malicious and what is right, and we can't just say, hey, it's your job to, I mean, we at Crypto, we've been like going on about how the SEC in 2023 kept saying, you figure out the rules,
right,
but we won't tell you what they are, but if you get them wrong, you're in trouble,
right.
But in some sense, that is a risk that we are doing something similar. I don't want to say one is right and one is wrong, because I can see downsides to both. But I think there's a part of me that understands why Solana says, hey, it's too hard to figure out what is a innocent mistake and what is a actual
right.
You tried to do something malicious, or at least with good enough effort, you should have done better.
Right.
So that needs to be worked out.
Yeah. Okay. I want to finish up with something just kind of unrelated, but since I have one of the elite mechanism designers here, we were like briefly chatting last night, and I've just found it quite interesting. You were very much in the weeds on MEV, and how we were thinking about this, and the bear market is like the only thing to talk about. So we were all nerd sniped by this. I'm curious, like, what are your updated views on just the MEV landscape? I guess like maybe, I know I've said this before, but my kind of, I think there is a good bit of memory holing going on right now with how much time and effort and intellectual resources were put into, figuring out the optimal fair way to order transactions. And now I'm seeing what we've kind of culminated with, which is Base and a lot of these L2s just running it on a single server. And how much of that is giving up on the vision, or is it not giving up on the vision? Because it is like, I'm not going to drop this. I don't care how long I'm in crypto. I'm not going to drop that we spent all this time trying to figure out how to trade on a distributed system of nodes around the world. And what we ultimately culminated with was, we're going to do it the way TradFi does it. Actually, we're going to have one, sort of God mode matching engine, and that's the best way to trade. We tried, but it didn't work. So I don't know if you have any updated thoughts, since I have somebody.
No. So I mean, this was actually my original entry into crypto, because even if you take, you can call out the L2s, but my original sort of crypto paper was just this observation that even when you have even when you have a truly decentralized L1, for Ethereum, there is a single sequencer in charge for every 12 seconds,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So you can call it it is decentralized in many ways, but for that 12 seconds, it's a local monopoly, and monopolies have monopoly distortions unless they're regulated somehow, right? Either by social pressure or some other pressure. So so our sort of, me and Max spent a lot of time pushing this idea of MCP,
right?
And Max is carrying that torch in Solana, and I might carry some of that torch into Tempo eventually down the line. I think it's hard. The thing we have to realize is it is hard. We're setting ourselves up for these. I think I have no disagreement with the fair ordering literature. My only disagreement was it was sort of pretending or hoping that if they just wrote down enough theorems, there was this answer out there that you do this and then your problem is solved. Go away. No, this is like MEV. Like, we talk about MEV, but there's this meme that some people have put out, like, the guy shooting the other guy shooting the other guy.
Yeah.
Like, there is just, you cannot understand, like, even these fully regulated systems in in the traditional financial market, there are people who spend their entire lives, all they're doing is like finding some form of MEV.
Right.
Like, bond delivery, there's like this thing called cheapest to deliver. And what you do is like this, the settlement, there are like 4 bonds that could settle. So your job is to find the one that is 1/8 of a BIP cheaper, so that you can go and deliver that and take, deliver something that is slightly cheaper for you to deliver that fulfills your settlement obligation. There is like endless amounts of games where people are playing to do this. There's no reason why, just because we decentralize it, we'll make all these problems go away. Our job is to make them as nice as possible, and to make the user experience.
Also.
Externalities. So that, by the way, that going back to why I'm at Tempo, like part of my job is to help think through making sure that like whatever externalities there are from the MEV there is, doesn't affect the user experience, so that we have a reliable payments chain at its core.
Yeah.
And the one big thing that the problem with MEV is not that people make money. That's fine. People will always find ways to make money. It's that when that starts becoming things like probabilistic spam that degrades the rest of the user experience, those externalities you just referred to, that's a disaster. That's what we want to avoid.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you. We spent a good bit of time on Tempo. I was able to pick your brain about other stuff too, though. So thank you. Appreciate you coming on.